Let me go straight to former Attorney General of India, Mukul Rohatgi, who's joining us live here. Mr. Rohatgi, pleasure speaking to you, sir, on NDTV. This narrative is something that's not new. It has resurfaced again. But, the Constitution of India is about people of India. It gives rights to people of India. Do you think elections are a strong enough benchmark to say that people are rejecting that narrative of Constitution in danger?
Good evening, Maria. Firstly, I fail to understand what is the point of waiving the Constitution at election meetings and going on saying that the Prime Minister has not read the Constitution. I don't understand what is the point to be made out of this, as if Mr. Gandhi himself understands the Constitution. The Constitution is a complex document. It is a manifestation of the will of the people of India. And the most important feature of the Constitution, which is the heart and soul of the Constitution, is democracy and parliamentary form of democracy. This means that the people of India, their will expressed by a humble vote, is supreme. It can throw out any party, any leader. It can bring in any party, any leader of any color or hue. And if democracy flourishes, the Constitution flourishes. This election or earlier elections is a resounding vote in favor of the Constitution, which is in favor of democracy. It is a vote, I think, for stability and for development. It's actually a vote in favor of the Prime Minister. It's a vote for the BJP. The other two allies happen to be there. But it's clearly a slap on the face of the Congress, who is talking about some kind of constitutionalism without understanding that it is democracy which thrives within the Constitution.
Say, Mr. Rohatgi, that BJP has successfully sent that message that when it comes to working within the framework of the Constitution, it has been doing so. And adding to that, sir, that these victories suggest that voters do not perceive a threat to the Constitution and they prioritize other agendas above this alleged fear.
As I told you, Mara, I don't understand what is the fear. What is it that the Prime Minister has done which kind of portrays that they are stomping over the Constitution or trying to crush the Constitution? I don't see anything. Whether it is repeal of Article 370 or whether it is some other provisions, etc., they have been done in a legal manner. The Supreme Court has put its stamp of approval on deletion of Article 370. And whatever the government did which was wrong, the Supreme Court has come down upon it. Take, for example, the issue of electoral bonds. The Supreme Court said that that scheme was not correct because, it tends to favor people who would be giving money to buy these bonds, etc. So ultimately, the court is the final arbiter of what is constitutional or what is illegal or contrary to the Constitution. So when the matter is taken before the court rules upon it. But what is it in the public field or in this election fever to allege by waiving the Constitution like this, the pocket edition of the Constitution, that the Congress party is for the Constitution and the BJP is not for the Constitution? If you go back to history, the blackest period in our democratic nation was the period of emergency, where all the rights guaranteed under the Constitution were sought to be suspended. That, I think, was the most anti-national, anti-constitution era or events that occurred. How is it for a party which did all this to come forward and say, no, this is what is going on is anti-constitutional. I mean, I fail to understand.
One nation, one election, one point that is being made repeatedly is a move which will be seen as anti-constitution. That's what India Bloc members seem to suggest, sir. Another point is that abrogation of Article 370 was seen as anti-constitution. Various institutions are being compromised as per the opposition. That's the charge that is coming against this government. Do you think all that doesn't really hold now? And if if democracy is functioning in the manner in which it is functioning, with people coming out and casting their votes and voting for a particular party, does it mean that it's people are fearful of this government, and hence, I don't know, I mean, I'm just trying to understand, as a legal eagle, how do you look at this entire narrative war against Constitution?
Let me start with your second question first. The question of deletion of Article 370. Now, people who were opposed to the deletion took up the matter to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has resoundingly upheld what the government and parliament did in revoking Article 370, in deleting it. So then that's the end of the matter. I mean, you have to abide by what the Supreme Court does. That's the final authority. And secondly, please don't forget, and I'm telling your viewers, Article 370 was meant to be a temporary provision. That temporary provision lasted 75 years. And how long can this go on? That people of one state are dealt with separately as compared to people of other states. The right to move around freely, the right to buy property in any part of India, except, like hill states and all that. Those are rights which are guaranteed to people of India. How could this discrimination go on? And this discrimination ultimately led to J&K not being as developed as its neighbors, to this onslaught of terrorism, stuff like that. So to bring it into the mainstream, I think it was a great move. Nobody was willing to touch it like a hot potato. The Prime Minister did it and the Supreme Court affirmed it. So that's now closed and dusted. One chapter is over. Now let us come to the second point which you raised first. Namely, one election, one nation. Now let's forget the Constitution. The Constitution did start by saying, and it still does say, that the states and the center will have elections. Every state will have an election. Every panchayat will have an election. Every corporation will have an election. Every cooperative society will have an election. So there are several scores of elections in this country. What does that mean? It means that politicians at every level of every body in elections will perpetually be in the election mode. They will perpetually be asking people to cast votes, and that will be their only agenda for the whole of 5 years. If that was to happen, now look at what will happen to the people who will be working for the people when those who want to work or who desire that they should be in politics will forever be begging for votes day in and day out. Who will be responsible for lakhs and crores of wasteful expenditure in elections at every time, every month, every 6 months? So obviously, I mean, I don't find any parallel in the world where a nation is perpetually, in some mode of election or not. So therefore, I mean, we have had this situation for 75 years. We have seen how it has worked. The Constitution itself allows change, Maria. The Constitution is not cast in stone. There is a provision in the Constitution, namely Article 368, which provides that the Constitution can be amended. It has to be amended and it has to be elastic to meet the needs of the time. The times are changing. I mean, we didn't have social media in 1950. We didn't have internet. We hardly had any TV. It was only newspapers. All that has now changed. I mean, I am on TV, on Zoom just now. So all this has changed. Things change. issues of national security change, the constitution is therefore adept at changing. It provides a procedure by which it can be changed. So these changes have to be brought. And I mean, I don't understand that fear that you're talking about. I mean, what is that fear? It's supposed to be a secret vote. If there is a tyrannical government, people can throw out a tyrannical government by casting their vote, which is secret. You look at, as I said, emergency. In 1977, Congress, which had ruled from 1950, there was nothing else on the horizon. The people got together and chucked out the Congress with a resounding majority. It brought in the Janata Party. And mind you, within 3 years, it brought back Mrs. Gandhi after she lost by a 2/3 majority. And then, things have been changing. So the weapon of votes is a very, very strong weapon. It's a secret weapon. It is no less than the atom bomb. So I don't understand what is that fear. Fear would be if somebody is being asked to cast a vote in front of somebody and show that you are going to put your stamp for a particular party. That is tyranny or fear. I mean, it's all very well to say all this. But
my last question to you, sir. There is often this charge that is leveled against the central government that it doesn't, respect the principles of federalism, which is so, integral to constitution, that it doesn't respect what state governments want or their rights.
See, some amount of tussle between the governments and the center, because they are of different hues, will always arise. Charges of being partisan will always arise. But then there are courts. Courts are available even for state governments. State governments challenge many things of the center in courts. I have seen that. I have seen cases of states versus states, states versus center, and all that. Courts are there to provide relief. And what people basically want is either development or roti kapda or makan. I mean, as long as these things are going on and there is freedom to speak, the courts have upheld the issues of liberty. The courts have upheld the principles of bail. If somebody is, you look at Mr. Soren. Now he won against the BJP. Maybe it was a vote against the BJP they had because of two reasons. One, that they had jailed him, and second, this this propaganda of infiltration, etc., etc. Maybe, as a non-political figure, I think these were two reasons. So where the BJP was wrong, the votes have been cast that way. Where people expect from the BJP, they cast their votes that way. That's about all.
Mr. Rohatgi, pleasure speaking to you, sir. Thank you for joining us on NDTV.